guys, to another episode of Bird of Rights. On this episode, I just want to talk to you a little bit about why you should vote and what the propositions are here in California, which are very important. In the last episode, I talked about how you should definitely go out there and vote, at least in your local elections, because they're hugely important. They're hugely important. My dog's in the way. She's messing up with my green screen. Anyway, they're hugely important, and you really need to understand that this is the place where you really need to basically go out there and do it, because it affects you directly, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the propositions that are on the ballot. And if you're like me, it was the hardest thing to understand. I could not understand it to save my life, right? I couldn't understand it. It was impossible to understand. So I made a video yesterday, but of course it was a complete mess because I was learning stuff as I was reading what the propositions were, and I was like, you know what, I got to do this again. This is not working out. So I decided to do it again. So that's what I'm doing today. And I found a website that basically dumbs it down enough for me to understand, which is going to be easier for me to explain to you. And of course, I will encourage you guys to also do it yourself. Go out there, search, do your own research and understand what they're really trying to say, because it's all these issues are super complex, and it needs quite a bit of time for you to really understand what they're trying to say. So without any further ado, here we go. So basically, there is proposition 14 to 25. There's 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 propositions that are in this year's general election ballot. And we're going to go through each one. Now, this one basically gives you the overview of what they are. Ballotpedia really gives a good example. You can click on each one of these, and it will tell you exactly what you want to know. Amazing explanation, but it's really dense, and a lot of times you get lost in the weeds when you're reading it. So I decided to make this video to be a little more concise and more precise, right? So here we go. So SF Gate, okay, they make it really easy. A Dummy's Guide to California 2020 Ballot Measures. Make it really easy to understand. And the big ones, basically, are most of them, right? We're going to start with 16. So Proposition 16, it basically allows state and its public universities to discriminate against, or basically give preferential treatment to, based on race, sex, ethnicity, or national origin in public employment, education, and contracting. And basically, this is bringing back affirmative action, which was enacted a long time ago in the 90s, to basically give people that were disenfranchised at the time more, or a better chance of equality, of equal treatment in workplace, for example, workplace or school, education, things like that. They're trying to bring it back, especially with all this BLM movement. I think it's a really big point. I see both the good and the bad sides of this. It's an interesting thing. Major players of it are the University of California Board of Regents, Senator Kamala Harris, Dianne Feinstein, and various Black Lives Matter related advocacy groups. Like I said, major players against it, a number of Asian American groups and Republicans in the California State Assembly, which makes sense. Now, this is a very interesting topic. I would suggest you guys to really do your own research and see how this would affect before you guys vote. But this is going to be a very important one. Recent polling support, it's basically 47% oppose it. So, interesting, right? All right, let's move on. Proposition 15. What it does, raises funds for schools and local government by requiring commercial and industrial properties with more than $3 million in holdings to be taxed based on market value as opposed to purchase price. It does not impact homeowners. So this is basically just they want to tax commercial buildings, basically commercial properties like hotels, retail stores, and give it to schools, which is great. But one thing that I notice here, it says schools and local governments, which means that a lot of this funding would actually go to the government and not necessarily to schools. It's like almost like a double-edged sword. Schools might get more funding, but so will the government, and I don't know which is going to get the bigger pie. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at. Major players, the governor Gavin Newsom, which kind of raises a red flag there. And then Teachers Association, I guess they probably say, might as well get something, might as well get nothing. Might as well get something because something is better than nothing, right? 51% for support so far, so my pass. Let's see here. Proposition 22. What it does, classifies app-based drivers as independent contractors and not employees, which effectively kneecaps AB5. And AB5, I believe, is something that passed 2 years ago or a year ago. I think it's 2 years ago, which basically gives the local government the right to give or say what the company should call its employee, whether you should call them the people that work for employers or not, which is very important. Major players for this are Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and other similar services. And I think the reason is because Uber and Lyft and all these other services, they want to keep everybody as contractors, not necessarily employees, because once they become employees, they have to make sure they, give benefits, insurance, and the such, right? But the thing is, when you become an employee, a lot of times it holds you to those, like, that company standard. So, you might not be able to work for other companies while you're employed by them. It requires you to work a certain amount of hours. So basically, you have to follow certain regulations if you become an employee of a company instead of just a contractor. When you're a contractor, you're freelance. You can do whatever you want. You can work for Uber 1 hour, Lyft another hour. So that's going to be the cons and pros of it. There's a lot more to it, but I would suggest you guys look into it. It's very important. So far, it looks like it might pass. Players against it: Kamala Harris, Attorney General Xavier Becerra, and several state assembly Democrats. That one's an interesting. Proposition 21. This one basically allows local governments to enact rent control on housing that was first occupied over 15 years ago. So basically, this one is really interesting because when I first read it, I thought, it's going to basically allow the government to, or maybe like the mayor or the city council, to control the rent. But yes and no. It's weird. It's basically where if you lived in a place for a long time, it basically gives them the power not to raise it or to be more, take it easy on the raise, on the year-over-year raise of the rent. But new renters, I don't think it makes a difference. So this is a weird one. I'm not really sure what this would do. Guys, look more into it. It's very important for people that have been living somewhere for a long time. You might not want your rent to go up, right? Here we go. Proposition 25. This one eliminates cash bail and gives judges the ability to determine whether a defendant should be released prior to a trial. So this one, they're just basically trying to get rid of cash or monetary bonds. Because a lot of these people, believe it or not, they actually don't have violent crimes. They don't do a lot of this stuff. They're just basically in jail for something minor. But it requires them to put up money up front to be released. And a lot of times it's not necessary. So this one might actually be pretty good. Something you should just look into. Proposition 17. Let me see. It restores voting rights to the people with felony convictions who have been released from prison but remain on parole. So this one basically gives people who set out their sentences and are on parole the ability to vote. Now, with the U.S. being the biggest prison system in the world, basically, this actually wouldn't be a bad thing. There's a lot of people that recently got released from prison that would actually be or make a huge difference while voting. So this might be important. Look into it. Major players for it are Kamala Harris, the ACLU, and many other Assembly Democrats. Against it, I don't even know, Integrity Project California. I think these are probably people that have money in the jail system, most likely. Proposition 20. It adds several crimes to the list of violent felonies for which early parole is restricted. Would undo a series of reforms enacted between 2011 and 2016 aim at reducing the state's prison population. So for this one, I actually looked a little bit more into it. It basically gives smaller crimes a bigger sentence, which I don't want to support, right? And I think this one specifically is on like shoplifting, I think, where if you shoplift, it gives it more weight to it. It becomes more of a crime. It's not as simple as, oh, you just stole something, you got to pay back, go to jail, pay a fine, something like that. But it could actually convict you of a felony, and you can go to prison for it. So that's an interesting one as well. Major players for it, again, like multiple law enforcement affiliated groups, which are most likely like wardens and police officers that would give them more of an ability to arrest people. Major players against it, everybody, basically. Criminal justice reform advocacy groups, the ACLU, Governor Jerry Brown. Here we go. Proposition 19, and this is basically the lesser ones that won't make a huge impact, but are also important, of course. Proposition 19 allows homeowners over the age of 55, disabled, or victims of a natural disaster to take existing property or lower property taxes rates to new homes anywhere in the state. So what this does basically is, if you're a victim of like the fires, they burn your house down and your house is worth $500,000, right? But then the insurance paid you out and you got a new one, but this one's worth $1 million. Then technically you have to pay more taxes on it, even though you're just replacing the house that burned down. So if you're over the age of 55 and this happens to you, you can actually carry over your old tax bracket to your new house. But again, this is weird because it only affects people that are 55, disabled, or victims of a natural disaster. So it's not everybody, right? Just those specific people. Which, again, it still makes sense, though. If you get something because you lost something else or you're disabled, you shouldn't have to be victimized and pay more for something that's not your fault, I think. That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion, by the way. There we go. Proposition 24, right? What does it do? Expands the state's consumer data privacy laws by creating a new state agency to enforce privacy laws, empowering consumers to order that businesses do not sell their personal information, and increasing financial penalties on those who violate privacy laws. So this one, again, for this one, I did a little more research, and this will basically create a privacy group for the state that would police companies, basically, from selling your data, would it be Google or Facebook or Amazon, whoever. If you told them, don't sell my stuff, and they're still selling it, there would be gigantic fines going to those things. But the problem that I saw with this one, I was looking into it, is that by creating this new, agency, it will increase state funding needs. So higher taxes, things like that. And it might actually require you to pay for privacy instead of just getting it, being like a right. So I don't know, that one's a little iffy. But again, privacy is important. So if that means a lot to you, it might be a good thing to do. Okay, Proposition 18. So what does it allow? Allow 17-year-old Californians who will be 18 by the following general election to vote in primaries and special elections. So basically, this would allow, like, if you're, primaries happen earlier in the year and you're 17, but by the time the general election rolls around, you're already of age, 18, you can vote in those primaries. And again, I don't think this is a big deal. Most young people, ages 18 and under, or even older than that and under, don't vote. It rarely vote, right? Hopefully it becomes a trend that they will do, but I think this is a good one. Why not? Have them vote. Maybe they'll like somebody more than somebody else. It's an important thing. But again, I don't think it's going to make a big impact. Young people don't care. They're too busy doing other things that young people do. I could be wrong, though. Prove me wrong. Here we go. Proposition 14. It issues $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds for State Stem Cell Research Institute. So for this one, I also did a little bit of initial research, and I found out that actually this just extends more funds to an already present bill. And a lot of people are actually against it because they're like, well, they haven't done anything with all this other money that we gave them prior, so why should we give them more, right? So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing. I personally don't want to, because it's not like this is free money. We have to, as citizens of the state, we have to pay this back. And I believe is like on a tune of $280 million a year for the next 30 years to pay this bond, which, maybe in 30 years, they'll make gigantic leaps in the science. Stem cell research, especially for this one, it could improve like Alzheimer's, right? Parkinson's, basically cerebral diseases that are prominent right now. So that one's a tough one. It's a lot of money. I'm split on that one. I'm not sure. That's up to you guys to decide. But again, here, like it says, Prop 14, there's much more than meets the eye. Look into that, guys. It's very important you guys know. Again, there's only like 20 days, or less than 20 days, like 18 days before it's voting time. So make sure if you haven't mailed in your ballot, be ready for that. Let's see. Proposition 23. This is going to be the last one, I believe. Yeah, the last one here. Places several new regulations on dialysis clinics, including requiring an on-site physician, mandating increased reporting of dialysis and related infections, and not allowing clinics to close before obtaining consent from state health department. One thing I will say about this is there's a lot of people that don't want this, and mostly the people who own the clinics, because I don't think people understand, but a lot of these clinics, a lot of these places, they're privately owned. They're not owned by Kaiser or health groups. They're not. They're privately owned, but they don't have they don't have a physician on site. They don't have a registered nurse on site. They might cut corners here and there, and which leads to a lot of infections. So basically, what this proposition wants to do is create almost like a standard of care for a lot of these places. And a lot of these places take cash. They don't take insurance. They take cash. They take money. Take credit card. And a lot of the times they just close down sometimes. They just be like, all right, we made our $1 billion. We're out of here. They close down. So now they're trying to make that a more consistent thing. So if a new clinic pops up, they have to stay up. They have to get the permission of the health department, the state health department, to close down. And again, they have to have a better standard of care. So if you know somebody, I personally know somebody that my family that does this, would actually be important, but at the same time, it might increase costs. So again, all these bills introduce a lot of pros and cons that you yourselves have to go in there and kind of look into it. This was just a very, very simple overview. If you like what you hear from face value, go ahead and vote for it. At the end of the day, it's our job to vote for these things or not. If what comes by supporting the propositions is better than what's before, then hey, I don't see why not. But that's going to be the end. Those are all the propositions. Please go out there and vote. Again, don't take my word for it. You make your own choice. Make your own decisions. Make research, right? Do your research. Do your own analysis and really find what you believe in and make the best of it. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to provide facts, which are hopefully I did in a good way. And the bird of right has spoken. Is your right to vote. Vote. Is your right to pick. Is your right to support whatever you want to support. That's what America was founded on, or the U.S. was founded on, and we should keep on doing it. Please don't let this go. Understand that it's very important for you to go out there and let your voice be known. I know people get discouraged because they're like, one vote, it's not going to matter. But I guarantee you more thousands of people think the same way and they don't go vote. So if everybody just changed that and thought, oh, my vote doesn't matter, but then now it does, how many people would that be? It could be millions. There's a huge amount of people that don't vote. So now if everybody changed that, we might be able to make a difference. If you see anything here that you like or that you agree with, please don't hesitate. Go vote. Make your voice be known, okay? I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it's very important. A lot of people don't realize how important it is. I mean, look who we have as a president. That could be because a lot of people didn't vote. A lot of people thought he was going to lose, so people didn't even go out and vote. But again, proved wrong. I mean, if you support him, go vote for him. If you don't support him, go vote for the other guy. Whatever. But go vote. Make your voice be heard. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time. And remember, you're right. The bird of rights. Have a good one, guys.